Warning, this content may be disturbing to some audiences. Subscribe. If you dare. He just pulled out a $100 bill and said I'd buy that for $100, and I politely turned him down, so he pulled out another $100 and offered me $200. Hey everybody, welcome to ANECDOSED. People ask Reddit. Pizza guys of Reddit, what's the strangest thing you've seen when delivering pizzas? Number 1. I deliver for DoorDash and Grubhub, sometimes pizzas. One time, I picked up an order from each app, same exact order, from the same restaurant, both named James, to the same hotel. When I knocked on the door, two guys were there and asked me which was I, DoorDash or Grubhub. I told them I was both and have both orders. They started to laugh really hard. When I asked what was so funny, they told me they had a bet on which one would come first. They thought it was going to be two different drivers and never thought one person would be using both apps. I laughed too and asked them which one was James. They told me they are both named James. I still wonder what other funny things those two guys come up with. Number 2. One time a retired Pizza Hut driver, and a Papa John's driver were at an apartment at the same time. We both started walking up the stairs. After the third floor I asked her, "Are you going to 308? We had a good laugh knowing we were going to the same place at the same time. The ladies at the apartment laughed pretty good when we were both standing there when they opened the door. One of the funniest moments I had while delivering. Number 3. Customer paid with a card and he had instructions to leave the pizza on a bench in a public area. Drop it off and quickly leave the area. I left but pulled on a side street where I could see the bench. I wait probably close to 5 minutes and then I see a man bust out of a dilapidated building I thought was empty. He runs up and grabs the pizza, he spins a whole 360 degrees and he is glancing in every direction as if he was afraid he was being watched. Then he hurries back to the place and when he gets to the door he sees me and his eyes get huge and wide, paranoid and fearful. He slammed the door shut. I just think he was tweaking or something wouldn't be out of the ordinary around here. Number 4. I delivered to a hotel in the middle of a local golf course. Called the number to let them know I was there and was told to come on up. Get to the room and when the guy answered, there was a large group of guys, all in golf attire, surrounding a single guy in a chair. He was bound and blindfolded. The one that answered didn't even bat an eye, just asked how much and tipped me $30 . Warily I took the money and walked away, but before the door was fully closed, I heard one of the guys ask, "I wonder if he knows this is a." Before I even left the parking lot, the guy that answered the door called me to say that the bound guy was his brother and he was bound and blindfolded because it's his bachelor party and the stripper was waiting to come out. I just showed up way earlier than they thought I would. Number 5. I was delivering a pizza to this house in a pretty rough neighborhood. These 3 colos answered the door and when the one guy stepped back to get the money I noticed huge amounts of money, and so much meth and enough weed to kill Snoop Dogg and around 20 guns. I was so scared. He gave me a tip of $20 cash and told me not to tell anyone. Number 6. Just simply coming up and there were 3 guys in underwear waiting for me. Handing the pizzas over and more just started coming out in underwear and these were also wearing cowboy hats and native headdresses, some kind of bro Halloween party or something. Got to grab my tip out of the dude's bra. It was funny as hell but when I left the building I had to process for a moment what the hell happened. Number 7. I once delivered a pizza late at night. The person who took the call told me that the person who ordered, let's call him Mark, was an old man and may take a while to get to the door. I get to the house and all the lights are off, no car in the driveway. I ring the doorbell, no answer, I knock on the door, no answer, I call the person's phone, no answer, call again, still nothing. At this point I had waited for about 15 minutes for this person and was walking back to my car to leave, when I heard the front door open, so I went back. Again, there aren't any lights on so I can only see the head of a young woman peek from behind the door, and she refuses to open it all the way, even to take the pizza. I then hear another woman behind her saying who cares if he sees, open the door, so she opens it a little more to sign the receipt. She couldn't see so I offered to shine my phone's flashlight so she could sign the receipt. I then realized that both of these women are naked. Me being a good employee, I averted my eyes as she signed the receipt and started walking back to my car. As I was walking away, one of the women yelled to me, "Have a good night, you know Mark is." And I burst into laughter as I had totally forgotten that this was the house of an elderly man. Number 8. I delivered a pizza to a young girl who was home alone and when she opened the door her dog immediately ran away. I handed her the pizza, got in my car, found the dog and returned it. She left me no tip, so I was feeling kind of salty about it on the way back to the restaurant. A few hours later her mother called the store asking to speak to me. She thanked me and explained they had left tip money, but their daughter was so upset about the dog she forgot to give it to me. I worked at this pizza place for 2 more years through college, and they would get 2 large pepperoni pizzas and request me to deliver it every week after that. They always tipped me at least $25. Number 9. Back in college when I used to deliver pizzas. I used to deliver to the local county jail. An officer was taking someone to jail. The guy going to jail, still with his hands cuffed behind his back, got away from the officer and took off as I was walking in and ran into me. I'm pretty sure this guy was tripping on meth. The officer caught up to both of us on the ground, and were able to subdue him. I was covered with pizza sauce and the officers on shift took the pizza, paid, and each gave me $20. I told my manager, and we remade the order for the officers, and I re-delivered the order. The police were grateful and I was given another tip. 1 delivery and I made about $400. Number 10. I was delivering a pizza to a high-rise once on a Saturday night. Got in the elevator and there was a guy dressed like a pimp who tried to buy my pizza from me that I was about to deliver. He didn't even ask what kind or what size, he just pulled out a $100 bill and said, "I buy that for $100, and I politely turned him down, so he pulled out another $100 and offered me $200. I told him I could get fired. Man, that was hard to turn down. Here's where things get totally F up. When I get to the door of the guy I'm delivering it to, he opens the door and is dressed like a pimp also, like, huge colorful jacket, and he grabs the pizza and gives me a $100 bill and shuts the door. Pizza was about $35, so a $65 tip. Number 11. Delivered a pizza to the back door of a funeral home. 2 guys in their 20s answer the door, both wearing long black rubber aprons over their shirts and ties, and long black rubber gloves. The aprons were glistening with some fluid or other. Fortunately the guy paying took off his gloves before pulling out his wallet and paying. I was only 18 at the time, kinda freaked me out. To the point that today, 42 years later, I still remember it. Number 12. I was delivering to a trailer park and heard the St. Rains of Bad karaoke from the driveway. Went and knocked on the door, was greeted by a 50-something couple in their underwear who insisted I come in to set the food down and receive payment. The guy offered me a beer and asked me to stay and party. I told him I couldn't, my boss would be mad. He started doling out my tip in ones, with which he would beckon and retreat deeper into the trailer. His wife kept eyeing me and giggling. I ended it at $3 worth of tip and just left as stoically as I could, then broke down laughing maniacally in my car. Number 13. I was working at Domino's, and we received a call for 2 pepperoni pizzas, and when I showed up to the house there was an older looking man and his dog on the roof. He didn't say anything about being on the roof. I raised my voice to tell him I was the pizza guy and he just looked at me and then he just jumped from the roof. It was only about 10 or 11 feet high, but it was kinda scary. He landed fine and gave me the money. I asked him about the dog and he said that there was always an open window so his dog can get on there and see the stars at night. I hope this man and his dog are doing good. Number 14. Showed up to a mansion in the rich part of suburbs. The house was completely dark, so I called the number, no answer. I get out and ring the doorbell 3 times, no answer. I start banging on the door and call again with no answer. All of a sudden the door flies open and a guy in his underwear and open bathrobe, breathing all heavy and sweating, reaches out, snags the pizza, just throws money at me and shuts the door. Another time I show up and the guy opens all excited with a big creepy smile on his face. Gestures me to come in and I say no. He won't do anything until I step inside. So I take a step in and he says to me, "Okay, so place the pizza on the floor right there," points to specific place, "Place the Pepsi there," points to a coffee table, "and put my breadsticks there," points to the opposite side of where the pizza is. I just look at him and say okay. As soon as I do it he says, "Okay, your money is on the floor by the door. Have an amazing day. Thank you very much." So I walked out backwards, not taking my eyes off him, grabbed my money and left. Weird effing people out there, man. Number 15. Delivered pizza for 2 years. The strangest thing was a woman ordering right next door, €2 extra for delivery. When she opened the door she was almost naked, wearing only a bra, had huge fake breasts and lip fillers, platinum long hair. Your textbook bimbo. The order was €18 and was already paid online. I told her it was already paid. However, the lady took €20 out of her bra and handed it to me, winked and said keep the change. Needless to say, it made my day. Number 16. I live by a massive government facility, I won't name it but it is in the DC area. This delivery was done at about 10:30 at night. I was told to ask for a Tim when I arrived at the back gate of the facility. I stopped at the gate and two black SUVs approached me. A man exited the second car and came and asked me what name he told me to ask for. I said Tim and gave him his pizza and got back in my car. Tim got back in his car on the passenger side and I turned around at the gate and left. The second car proceeded to follow me back to the pizza shop and then sat across the street for 15 minutes and only left when I made a second delivery. That was my last delivery as a pizza guy. Number 17. I no longer do deliveries but one that has stayed with me was delivering to a house and this guy answers the door in a blood-covered apron and a handsaw. The smell of blood was so strong you could taste it. So as he went to get his money I pulled my phone and dialed 911 and put it back in my pocket. The transaction took about 9 or 10 minutes. As I got in my car I could see the first blue light so I pulled out calmly and then stopped to tell them I had called. Luckily there was no murder. It turns out he had hit a deer and just loaded it up in his truck and was butchering it and decided he wanted pizza. He ordered again and asked for me by name. He apologized for the misunderstanding and though he didn't tip me in money he offered me deer sausage. I declined for fear he was mad and was trying to poison me. Make sure to share your personal story in the comments below and have the opportunity to be featured in a future video. Also, if you like these topics don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification button to continue seeing more content like this every day. See you next time. Warning, this content may be disturbing to some audiences. Subscribe. If you dare. We look over and one guy is stacking glasses, ketchup, salts, peppers. You name it. Literally anything he could get his hands on he was stacking. Hey everybody, welcome to AskReddit. People ask Reddit. Bartenders of Reddit, what is the coolest thing you've witnessed a drunk person do at a bar? Number 1. Ex-bartender assistant here, worked in one of the bigger country bars in Canada. I've seen a fair bit of stupid shit, but the best would have to be a shorter guy, 5'2"-ish, step in when a buddy was about to get the shit kicked out of him by another drunk guy over 6 feet 0 inches and reasonably built. The shorter guy steps in, blocks the angry drunk, who promptly backhands the shorter guy to the ground. Normally security would have stepped in by now, but it was a busy night and they hadn't seen the altercation. Shorter guy stands back up, dusts himself off and does what I can only describe as a jumping jackhammer punch to the drunk guy's face. Basically he jumped up, and rode the guy down, feeding him what looked to be 5 to 6 punches. Guy was done before he hit the ground, broken nose, the works. Unfortunately both were kicked out due to fighting, but I fought for the shorter guy to stay. Number 2. One time I remember this girl who was crazy. Not going to sugarcoat it. She used to be a regular, and we were in the same middle and high school. She spends the entire night drinking and she is so drunk I don't think she even remembers coming to the club. At the end of the night, the band/DJ is gone and people are just getting ready to leave and the bar is still open while everyone is leaving and we're just getting ready to close. She starts yelling at people about how famous she is. She's not, she's got maybe 5-10K followers on Snapchat but she's not famous. She talks about where she is working and how it is more impressive than just working at a bar. Then she just walks into the kitchen and says that she's not leaving unless she gets some complimentary wine bottle or something and then just walks into the bar and tries to get one herself. Of course a bouncer lifts her up and just walks with her out of the kitchen and tells her that it's off limits and now especially for her since she tried to take a bottle. She then goes up on the tables trying to get everyone to come with her and how the devil is in this club and just yells some nonsense and is of course ignored. The bouncers just pick her up and take her outside and then she spends a good hour banging on the windows and yelling at people about how she's famous, how impressive her job at some makeup store is and how everyone there is beneath her. Haven't seen her since that night and this was like 2 years ago. Number 3. I don't know if cool is the best description but I cut a very drunk guy off one night but allowed him to sit at the bar to sober up a bit. After a couple of club sodas, he stumbles over to the jukebox to play some music. It was an old jukebox that required you to push 4 digits to play a song. Well, this guy makes his selection, and when he pushes the 4th digit he pushes himself backwards and falls flat on his back making a huge scene. Just as I start to make my way over to help his drunk ass up his song starts playing. It's I Fall to Pieces by Patsy Cline. Perfect. Number 4. I used to manage and bartend a very busy Boston Pizza in its city of origin. Boston Pizza is known for Fishbowl Friday, which is 3 shots of liquor mixed and served in a fishbowl exactly like these. They're made of glass. Some BPs have switched to a plastic globe-like mug thing with a handle, not schooners, but I digress. This guy at my bar told me he was going to steal a fishbowl. This is a common problem, and I whipped out my manager balls and told him not to take a chance, and went to decant his drink into a schooner instead as a preventative measure. His fishbowl is gone. He doesn't have a bag, it's the middle of a very hot summer and therefore no jacket and no bulky clothes. Dude fit an entire fishbowl into the crotch of his skinny jeans. He had them sag just so you couldn't tell when he stood up. He got his fishbowl. Number 5. So dumb, but at last call, my buddy and I went over to one of the exits to make sure people weren't leaving with drinks, city ordinance. We see a very drunk girl in her early 20s approaching, being helped out by 2 of her friends. When she gets close, she goes to my buddy, she raises her hand up for a high five. My buddy raises his hand to give her one, and she immediately goes into finger guns and says "WHO's gay," pointing at my friend with his hand raised looking like a dope. It was so random and unexpected, a true stroke of drunken genius. Number 6. I used to work at a golf club. Well, the horn sounded for all the golfers to come in because a storm was coming through. So I've got all these guys in the men's grill drinking and having a good time when the power cuts out. Inky darkness, can't see a thing. The generators turn on after 20 seconds or so, and one of the guys is standing on his chair, with his pants down at his ankles and is pulling off his shirt. He gets it off, looks around at the room all staring at him, waits a beat and says, "Oh, we're not doing this?" The room erupted. It was just perfect. Number 7. Once at a bar in my hometown on Halloween night, everyone was in costumes. I was on the patio/smoking area and one dude stood out. He was 6 feet 5 inches and dressed in full super real looking cowboy gear, Stetson hat, jeans, duster, boots with spurs, just standing in the corner smoking cigarettes by himself all night. So, a bunch of people are on the patio smoking and drinking, and I notice a woman, dressed as a slutty minion or something equally silly, with a cigarette in her mouth, digging through her purse looking for a lighter. Out of FING nowhere, Cowboy Dan swoops in, flicks open a Zippo, lights her cigarette, tips his hat and says "ma'am" and goes back to his corner without another word. It was the coolest goddamn thing I've ever seen. Number 8. A group of guys were being loud and obnoxious assholes, in a very full bar, while playing pool and pumping tons of money into the touchtunes, playing their hoobastank or whatever the F they were playing. Being completely disruptive and intimidating anyone trying to use the jukebox. This one random guy sits at the bar right in front of me with his girlfriend and says, "Want to see something funny?" Pulls up the touchtunes app, and starts playing a bunch of random songs and get cute to the front of the list. Almost everyone in the bar started laughing at the group when Mariah Carey's Christmas album started playing while the brothers were yelling at each other to figure out who played the song. Went on for about an hour until they left. Oh, random guy. I wish there were more people like you out there. Number 9. I used to be a bartender at a restaurant/bar that had about 60% regulars in there. One night I was bartending, this big shot guy came in after a round of golf with his buddy. I wasn't familiar with the man, but he was ordering plenty of fancy drinks. Eventually, after they eat, their tab is pushing $150. This lady walks in who is a regular, we'll call her January. He gets all excited because he hasn't seen this lady in years apparently. Eventually he gives me the tab back, and orders multiple rounds for the whole bar in hopes to impress January. His tab is like $650 by 9 p.m., which is when we close on Sundays. Tips me $300. I was like F yeah, considering he bought me a couple drinks as well and I'm a broke college kid. Number 10. I tended bar in North Mississippi where several famous musicians have called home at one time or another. We had a regular who had been popular in the 50s and 60s, got regular radio play and others recorded his songs, but was probably more famous for being an influence on the rockabilly movement. Anyway, he could be falling down drunk, barely able to speak or hold his drink, but if he was handed a guitar and guided to the bar stool on stage, he could sing and play like he was sober and 40 years younger. As soon as he would set the guitar down, he would need help to walk off the stage. I've seen him finish playing, hand his guitar to its owner, then fall face first on the floor, out cold. If you're curious who he was, he lent his name to a famous bass player in a band known for wearing lots of face paint and singing about Detroit. Number 11. This actually happened a few weeks ago. At the bar I work at, there are a few tables that people can sit at and they have a waitress. So there's a party of like 6 at one of them, and all of a sudden people start cheering, so we look over and one guy is stacking glasses, ketchup, salts, peppers. You name it. Literally anything he could get his hands on he was stacking. He even had people at other tables donating to his creation. His tower of glassware was about 3 feet tall. To the point where he had to stand on his chair to keep stacking things. I don't think I've ever seen my manager move faster than at that moment. Number 12. Bartending back in my college days at a local dive bar. The place was shoulder to shoulder packed, and loud as hell. Out of nowhere, some kid slowly starts to stand on one of the bar stools until he has the posture of a Marine. After a second or two the entire bar went dead quiet and everyone was looking at him, bar staff included. He then slowly raised a key with a massive pile of coke on it up to his nose, inhaled and threw a fist in the air. The entire bar erupted in applause. Usually if you pull a stunt like that you'll get kicked out, but something about this kid made it so goddamn funny that I floated him a few shots on the house instead. Number 13. Not the coolest. Possibly the grossest. I watched this very large man wobbling at the bar, holding on as if he was gonna get thrown out of orbit. I instinctively gave him some water and told him to straighten up or he was out. Chugging the water he just grunted, then started heaving. I slowly backed up and got a bouncer. I'll be damned if I'm cleaning up barf. We watched this man start barfing in his cup. We went over to escort him out and he was so committed to his sobriety he told me his barf cup was his drink, then drank it. He drank a cup of barf. Straight face, then told us he was sober. I admire his dedication. Number 14. Not a regular bartender, but I occasionally help in a small bar. One time I was there, it was already late, around 4 a.m, only a few people inside when a guy enters inside. He was clearly drunk, bare feet and with a small guitar, similar with a ukulele. And at first my boss thought we should get rid of him, but then the dude starts playing with his guitar and everybody starts singing folk songs and everyone asking for more drinks again and again. It was a good night. Number 15. One of my drunk regulars was a Marine, and said he was Special Forces. He was so interesting really, and an art collector. One slow night, with only regulars, a super expensive craft beer bar, he brought down a hand-woven rug from Iran. It was an incredible rug, with so much character and depth. He put it on the floor of the bar, and everyone, including myself, took our shoes off and walked all over it to feel how amazing it was on the old feet. Said it cost him $4,000. It was neat. When I put my 2 weeks in, he invited us all up, his apt was above the bar, and showed us his collection. He also had pictures on the wall with himself, and the living presidents. Very cool. To us nerds smile. Then he tipped $600 cash for the good times. Great person, but suffered from harsh PTSD that he self-medicated. Hope is okay these days. Number 16. A drunk regular accidentally takes another drunk regular's purse home. She calls him to bring the purse back. They were friends, which he does while eating an ice cream cone. She rhetorically asked where her ice cream was. He proceeds to go to the gas station across the street and comes back with a whole grocery bag full of ice cream cones, and not only gives one to her, but to every customer at the bar and multiple to us bartenders. There was something so adorable about a room full of adults elated to have one giant, spontaneous ice cream party. Make sure to share your personal story in the comments below and have the opportunity to be featured in a future video. Also, if you like these topics, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification button to continue seeing more content like this every day. See you next time. Warning, this content may be disturbing to some audiences. Subscribe, if you dare. All the owner did was to say the billionaire's name, and the health inspector said, "Oh okay, bye." Hey everybody, welcome to ANECDOSED. People ask Reddit. People who work in high-class restaurants and hotels, what is the most ridiculous, stereotypical rich person thing you've ever experienced someone has done? Number 1. I operated a premium chain restaurant in Canada. One day this Indian gentleman started coming in, at first by himself. On the first day he spent $200 on wine and tipped $1,000. The next day he did the same again. When we saw him the third time, I had servers fighting over him. Anyway, one evening he got drunk on wine and Brad the busboy made the mistake complimenting his watch. Mr. S takes off his tag and gives it to Brad. The next morning Mr. S comes back to get his car and asks if Brad is there. I say yes and go get him. Brad knows what's up and is removing the watch as he walks over to Mr. S. Mr. S says, "Brad, I'm really sorry I got drunk last night and gave you my watch." Brad is chuckling as he is removing the watch and says it's no problem and he was just holding the watch until Mr. S returned. The next thing Mr. S said, "I could not believe, Brad, you don't understand. I'm sorry because it was very rude of me to give you a used gift." And at that moment Mr. S pulled out a box with a brand new Tag Heuer inside and handed it to Brad. Number 2. I interviewed at a large hotel attached to a casino, and while I was being shown around the front desk, a woman walked up, said nothing, and got room keys after being greeted by the front desk agent. She immediately turned and walked away. Then the manager who was interviewing turned to me and said, "That's Mrs. Rich Ladypants. You never ask her for her name, her ID, or God forbid a credit card. She stays here once or twice a week because her husband spends so much in the casino. If you upset her, she will yell at you and then hand the person working next to you a $100 bill just to spite you." I ended up turning down a job there, thankfully so, because apparently she wasn't the only guest of her type there. Number 3. My uncle works at a very upscale restaurant on a very well-to-do and desirable vacation island in the Atlantic Ocean. One of their regular customers is a billionaire oil guy. My uncle has told me, he arrives on a yacht that tows a smaller yacht. The smaller yacht is still big enough to have a helicopter. He demands to have his dogs seated at the table and feeds them foie gras and expensive water. When he takes friends to eat, my uncle has never seen him with the same woman twice, and often it's at a table full of women. If he really liked the meal, he would go through the restaurant and, in front of everyone, peel off crisp 100s from a giant roll of money in his pocket and tip every service person whether they helped or not. One time the owner got a call from health inspectors saying they received a complaint that dogs were seen eating in the restaurant. All the owner did was speak the billionaire's name, and the health inspector said, "Oh, okay, bye." Number 4. Don't work at any high-class restaurants or hotels, but I currently live in an old yet nice and comfy apartment in Giza, around 20 minutes from the Pyramids complex. The landlady is a very nice old lady, probably in her 60s, and is filthy rich. Last year my car had to be repaired after a minor crash for more than a week, and when the landlady found out from the Bewabstormen about my situation, she sent one of her English-speaking mates to give me car keys for a BMW 520i, Mercedes-Benz S600, and a brand new Land Cruiser. The madam insists you use her car until yours is repaired. I was shocked, of course, and asked her if she still could go around with her lending this much cars to me. "No worry, madam has 12 cars in Al Kahira." Okay, I guess. I ended up only using the Land Cruiser because it's the cheapest one, I think. Another story is when she knew I would graduate from college soon. She asked me to come visit her place, I did as she asked, and she just gave me a set of keys and some money. "Here, I have a nice villa in Ain Sogna. Go visit it with friends and family, food and drinks is on me, I have maids and cooks there. You can use mine, the money is for fuel. Happy graduation." I told her that I just couldn't take it, but she just shooed me away and told me to return her keys only after I really visited the villa. Haven't gone to the place yet, but I will soon enough when I have time. Ridiculous, yeah, but in a really good way. Number 5. I worked for a resort in the Seychelles for 4 years. I have hundreds of stories which would fit this post, but one that stands out was a very wealthy Canadian family who stayed at one of the private residences for a couple of weeks. They brought their own staff, including 2 personal chefs, but also asked for a hotel chef to assist their team with prep and local ingredient knowledge. A chef, which happened to be my friend, was selected to spend the 2 weeks with them. One day, another member of their staff came down to one of the restaurants and purchased 2 bottles of wine for €11,000 plus each. Now we had far more expensive bottles on the list, but this was still a notable sale, and later that night, I asked my mate what they had cooked to accompany the wine. Turns out they had poured both bottles into the pot while making a coq au vin. Coq au vin is a French dish of chicken braised with wine, lardons, mushrooms, and optionally garlic. Number 6. I used to work at a ski resort that sits at the top of a steep canyon. The geography is pretty extreme and people don't want to drive through the snow, so everyone with enough money stays directly at the resort. Our rooms generally weren't over the top luxurious, but we had probably the second or third nicest hotel in the resort area and saw some rich clientele. One time someone in sales or reservations screwed up with a conference, which caused the significantly larger and more 5-star luxury style place up the hill to become oversold. so naturally they bumped some of them down to our hotel. Normally this isn't a big deal. We'd comp them enough stuff like free spa passes at the 5 place and a meal and they'd be happy. They're coming for some random conference that sold a huge block of rooms. They probably didn't even know what hotel they were at or what type of room they were in. As someone who works at a higher end hotel, you get really sensitive to people's body languages, and you can tell when people are grumpy. Normally they're just tired from a long trip or pissed at their spouse or something, and it has nothing to do with you, but you can see it 100 yards away. This guy walked through the door and was broadcasting his shitty attitude like there was a giant lighthouse light strapped on his head. Not only was he pissed off, but he kept making eye contact with me to let me know he was pissed off about the move and pissed off that he had to wait in line to check in. I knew when he walked up that he was going to go off. He gave me the typically shitty attitude interrogation. What's going on? Why did this happen? Are you incompetent? Yada yada. It was really unpleasant, but I'm a pro. I was doing pretty good at the hospitality verbal kung fu and not giving him anything to be pissed off at me about. He started asking about the amenities of the hotel, looking for an opening. Do you have a pool? Yes, sir, we do. Here's your key. Do you have a restaurant? Yes, sir. It's really fantastic. Here's a voucher for a meal on us. Would you like me to make you a reservation? Do you have a spa? Yes. We have steam rooms, sauna, and a masseuse on contract. We also would be happy to take you to the 5 spa at any time. Here's the number for our valet driver. What time would you prefer your appointment? It's also worth noting that we're like 100 yards away from the other building. We even had a 24-hour valet to come pick them up and drive them around literally on call if they didn't want to walk through the snow. We have a better restaurant than the 5 place at normal prices, a nice gym, nice pool, the whole 9 yards. This was a wipe your ass if you ask about the nice kind of hospitality environment that most people really enjoyed. He couldn't really find anything to complain about, but he was still interrogating me. Then he asked me about the ski lockers. Do you have ski lockers? Yes, sir. The ski locker is on the 1st floor, just across the walkway from the tram center, so you can unload without having to walk up any stairs. The locker number is just your room number. Here's your combination. Do you have boot warmers? No, sir. We do not. He'd finally found something to go off about. The dude threw his head back and let out a big, ooh. You don't have boot warmers? What kind of place doesn't even have boot warmers in the locker room? You expect me to put on my skis when they're frozen cold in the morning? What am I supposed to do, put them in my room where they'll get all smelly? Dude proceeded to unleash on me for a good 3 or 4 minutes all the pent-up rage he'd been building for the last hour or so, except his target was how ridiculous it was that we didn't have electric boot warmers in his private ski locker at the luxury hotel. I worked in high-end hospitality for 10 years, and probably the second worst ass chewing I ever received from a customer was over our lack of effing boot warmers. Number 7. I worked at a nice restaurant in downtown Portland, and one day a lady called to make a dinner reservation for a large group. But first she starts asking all these questions about security, we had none, and how I thought the staff and patrons would handle a celebrity dining there. Is there enough space to be private? They like to be private. Would it be okay if they brought their own security, to stop people from taking pictures and such? Etc. But of course, we couldn't give names. I rolled my eyes, told her whatever they need to do, and booked the date and time. Yes, I was super curious who it would be, and stayed past my shift to see who walked through the doors when the big night came. The group arrived, and it was no one. Not one of us who worked there recognized a single member of their party. They sure acted like they were someone, but all we saw was a loud group of douchey-looking 20-somethings. They actually did bring a bodyguard who stood in the corner with sunglasses on the whole time. The only attention they got from other diners was the occasional side-eye because they were being such rude and obnoxious assholes. Shock of shocks, they treated our staff horribly, and tipped even worse. We'll never know who that person thought they were. For those of you asking about the autograph, that actually jogged a whole new memory. We did try to add 18%, but the party threw a massive fit about that, complained about the service, which I'm sure was fine, it was a well-known place, and refused to pay it, so the manager took it off so as not to create a bigger scene. Left the server in tears. I think everyone just wanted to get them out by that point. Number 8. Back when I was waitering, there was a woman and her friends at one of my tables. The woman asked for a can of Coke, Coca-Cola, just so we're clear. When I brought their drinks and gave the woman her Coke, She looked at me and, in that typical rich bitch voice, said, "Excuse me, honey? I asked for Fanta, not Coke." So I apologized, wrote it onto my notepad, and went back to get her a can of Fanta. Brought it to her and again she turned to me and said, "I didn't ask for Fanta, I asked for cream soda." By this time, I was getting a bit annoyed, but went back and got her a cream soda anyway. And surely, when I returned to her table, she did the same thing again. I asked for Sprite. Should I call the manager? So, for the last time, I smiled and I went back to the kitchen and packed 1 can of each, Coke, cream soda, Fanta, Sprite, Pepsi, and Sparberry soda, into a small plastic box and took it all to her and said, "Here you go, miss, take your pick." She looked offended and almost made a scene. She started lecturing me about how I'm incapable of getting the simplest order right and that she wants to talk to the restaurant's manager. I told her that I can call him, and that I'll show him all the soda types I wrote on my notepad that she asked for, and we can get his opinion on the matter. She turned and took her damn Sprite out of the plastic box and said, "Just leave it." Her friends were silent throughout the whole ordeal and none of them gave me any issues further on. I didn't receive a tip, as expected, but I shrugged it off. Most customers were decent. Make sure to share your personal story in the comments below and have the opportunity to be featured in a future video. Also, if you like these topics, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification button to continue seeing more content like this every day. See you next time. Warning, this content may be disturbing to some audiences. Subscribe, if you dare. If you are going to a big event, e.g. a graduation, print out some sheets of paper that say reserved. Hey everybody, welcome to ANECDOSED. People ask Reddit. What are the unethical life hacks that you use? Number 1. One year I went with my dad to vote. He was 70 and had a portable oxygen tank that he wore on a shoulder strap as he had lung cancer. He was still relatively strong at this point. He took one look at the 30 to 40 person deep queue and said, "Bugger this." He strode past the queue, waved his oxygen tank at the door person and said, "James Hardy got me," and went straight to the sign-in desk. I looked apologetic, said I was his carer, and went in after him. Quickest voting experience of my life. None of the officials had a clue how to deal with the situation, so they just looked stunned and let it happen. For those who don't know, James Hardy was the big asbestos manufacturer in Australia back in the day, and that was the sort of lung cancer he had. Number 2. When ambushed by chuggers, not sure if other countries call them this, but those semi-legitimate professional charity collectors with clipboards who skim off the majority of your direct debit, don't say a word. Do not say no, go away if you. They're trained to pounce. If they say nice hat, do not say thanks. They're trained to pounce. Just raise your hand, stop/quieting gesture, and they'll leave you. Unethical and rude, but okay because F that whole industry. Number 3. One time when getting off a plane, I started to feel lightheaded. My mom sat me in a wheelchair so we could keep moving as we had another flight to catch. We were moved to the front of every line and we would not have caught our next flight had I not been in a wheelchair. I didn't feel bad at all. Number 4. Back in my homeless panhandling days, if I was panhandling with a sign where there was foot traffic, I'd make sure to take most of the money I'd been given out of the container so it looked like I hadn't been given as much. Other panhandling pro tips: if you're flying a sign, a funny sign tends to make more money than a sad one. Spaceship broken, need parts, saving up for a rainy day if it's raining, stuff like that. In some panhandling situations it is better to lie with reverse psychology. For example, when I was passing through Las Vegas and panhandling on the Strip, people were more likely to kick down cash if my sign read "need money for beer" as opposed to "hungry as F" or something. Even when I was actually hungry as F, people were more likely to believe I was trying to get wasted. I've since gotten pretty stable, have a good job, car, apartment, etc. Honestly, working a job is much easier on a person's psyche than panhandling. People calling you a piece of shit all the time or always questioning your motives, or trying to solicit you for sex can really wear you down. Number 5. I'm from the UK, so obviously, this is tea-based. If you're not one for making tea for everybody at the same time, the first time you're asked to do it, ask everybody twice and then still get each cup slightly wrong. This way people will not associate you with a good brew and won't ask you to make it. Bonus hack: don't remember how each individual has their tea/coffee, just how many have each milk/sugar combo. Makes it a lot easier. Number 6. I served at a restaurant in not the nicest area, but we give out 20% off coupons, so when tables have multiple coupons I just keep them as it only takes one to discount, and I save them for tables with a high ticket price that pay in cash. Once I'm sure they're done and all settled up, I add the discount and skim that percentage to my tips, because getting a 5 to 10% tip for a $200 ticket. That's too much damn work and stress, and also I like money. Number 7. This one is no longer possible, because of euro, but back in the 90s the one Deutsche Mark coin, around $1, had the same size and weight as the 2.50 escudos coin, around 1 cent, meaning whoever went to Portugal before going to Germany and got a bunch of 2.50 escudos coins, would be able to eat in Germany for almost nothing, if they only used vending machines. Number 8. I found out a way to get free food at work using a little known glitch in our cash register software. Essentially I can ring up an entire meal as extra toppings and it will show up in the kitchen as just a normal combo meal. The price for everything is inherently zero, so my order won't show up if anyone chooses to audit any discounts or voids. No one has caught on yet. It would take a very perceptive back-of-house worker to notice that the order didn't get sent to their specific station and only the main screen, but those guys aren't too bright. Number 9. Don't know if I should spread this around, but if you are going to a big event, e.g. a graduation, print out some sheets of paper that say reserved. When you get there early, you can put them wherever you want and hold seats for friends and family. The best part is, you don't even have to watch the seats. You could go get a coffee or something and come back. No one will take those seats. Number 10. When your headphones break, especially if you get cheap ones, buy the same ones that you had before. After cleaning the old ones, put them in the package and return the package, but keep the new ones. Always say they were defective and broke only after a few days. Make sure you have the receipt. If you use the words defective, they have to take it back as long as you have the receipt. Also, if you go to a nice event, get a nice dress from the store, leaving the tag on. Wear a little cardigan over the dress so that the tag is concealed. Go to said event and the next day return the dress, saying that it didn't fit the way you would have liked, and get your money back. I used to do these things until I got some dignity. Number 11. Firemen standing at every corner downtown collecting donations for some sort of charity. When I walk past the first one, he asks for a donation, but I just tell him I already gave it to the guy across the street. He thanks me profusely. When I'm walking by another fireman, same thing, and I tell him I just gave it to the other guy. He thanks me profusely. Repeat until I've walked past them all. They feel good, I feel good. Win-win. Well, except for the charity. Number 12. A couple times I have come into work late and not clocked in. That way they don't know what time I actually got there, but they know I'm here. Then I tell them I was in such a hurry to get started that I forgot to clock in. So, the HR person usually adjusts my time so to show I was there on time. I learned this trick from a massive stoner who frequently came into work so baked that he honestly forgot about clocking in. Number 13. I dunno if it's as bad as some, but you could make the argument that it is unethical. I have a coin given to me by my brother. It's about the size and weight of a quarter, but any time I have ever put it into any machine that takes quarters, it takes the 25-cent credit and returns it in the return slot. I used to use it for soda and stuff in high school, but now it is exclusively for laundry. The laundromat at my apartment is unsupervised, and I only use it when no one is there at 3 a.m. Number 14. When ordering a meal at a Pizza Hut, order 10 minutes before they close and say you're going to pay with cash. As soon as the delivery driver gets to your house, say you made a mistake and you wish to pay with credit. They'll call their boss, he or she will say they can't accept credit at this time. The 5 times I've done this, they let me keep the pizza for free. Make sure you actually have the money to pay for the meal just in case this doesn't work in your area. Also, I'd recommend you do this once a month so they don't get suspicious. Number 15. If you're into sports and still in school/uni, join the sport AG/club you like, but tell them you don't want to pay the yearly/semester fee yet because you want to see how it goes. That buys you 2 or 3 visits. In this time, I usually find out when the campus gym is opened, empty, or getting cleaned by looking at the cleaning crew schedule. There's usually a janitor's office or a glass box by the entrance or something, and all that shit will be on a wall somewhere. Photo. Done. Now I can come and go as I please, with nobody asking money from me. Cleaning crews don't give a shit if someone is training there at odd hours and alone. They clean around me. There's always some scholarship kid giving it 110%, or having an important competition next week, etc., and I get lumped in with them and ignored. Number 16. I've been summoned for jury duty a number of times. I enjoy serving, nice break from work, but I always find it so funny how hard people try to get out of it and how unsuccessful they are. The judge doesn't care about your hardships. But they do care if you're a racist. Or claim to know the defendant. No one will fact check it and you'll be thrown off immediately. Also, if you want Red Cross to stop calling you to donate blood, tell them you are gay and ineligible. No more calls. Number 17. Using the Pandora Windows Vista gadget gets you ad-free Pandora, and more skips. It's basically the paid Pandora benefits for free. A $5 per month savings. Note this gadget works in Windows 7 natively, with 64-bit version of Flash, and Windows 8 and Windows 10 if you get the add-on to make it work as an app. I do actually pay for the service now and have for years, but mostly because I use the gadget for so long I wanted the same experience on my phone for long car rides, and felt the $36 per year was well worth it. Number 18. This reminds me of a trick I did using the Australian 10c coin. There was a Skittles vending machine similar to the bubblegum dispensers. You put a coin in and spin a handle that dispenses the candy. The cost of one turn was $1. The trick was, you buy one round for $1, then get one of the Skittles and squish it to the 10c coin. The 10c was almost identical to the $1 coin except for weight, so when you place the 10c coin with the squished Skittle into the machine, not only did it register as a $1 coin, but the coin got stuck in the machine, allowing us to turn the handle without a limit. My mates and I emptied the machine for $1.10. Number 19. At the retail store I work at, you could grab a product, break the packaging on your way to the register, pretend to notice it at the register, and say you don't want to buy it unless you get a discount, and we don't give a F. You could also just claim it was marked as on sale, and it's easier for us to give you the discount than grab someone to check the shelf price. Maybe other stores care more, but we don't really have a correlation between store profit and payroll. Actually, this isn't unethical because F major retail corporations. Just be polite to the clerk about it and you're better than 90% of the people they deal with. Number 20. Always buy a service plan from Best Buy. 2 to 3 years minimum. Preferably the replacement plan or whatever they decide to call it at the time. Accidental damage isn't needed. File that sucker away or tape the thing to the device you bought. Set a calendar event on your phone, Google Calendar or iCal, for 1 month before the service plan expires. If the device is small enough, microwave it for about 4 seconds. Return to Best Buy with the dead device and service plan in hand. Policy is to replace devices for comparable models or exact models. Usually you get the newer of the two options. Works great with GPS, digital cameras, video cards, handheld electronics, etc. iPods, TVs, audio receivers, Xbox, and PS4. However, need to have this procedure done 4 times for a new one. The no lemon policy is after the 3rd consecutive repair. Give yourself 3 months to do this. On getting the new device, buy another service plan always. Source, worked it. Was an installer. All the employees do this. Buy from landsend.com always. Especially shoes. Everything, absolutely everything sold on that site has a no questions asked lifetime satisfaction guarantee. Use it. Dress shirts, pants, shoes, etc. It's glorious. Make sure to share your personal story in the comments below and have the opportunity to be featured in a future video. Also, if you like these topics, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification button to continue seeing more content like this every day. See you next time. Warning, this content may be disturbing to some audiences. Subscribe. If you dare. My brother calls me a few days later pissed as all hell because during his screening for a security clearance someone finds pictures of him wearing perfectly tailored Soviet regalia. Hey everybody, welcome to ANECDOSED. People ask Reddit. Identical twins of Reddit, what's the most embarrassing situation where you've been mistaken for your twin? Number 1. A friend and his wife go to the same supermarket every week. His identical twin also goes there, with his wife. One day, after summoning up the courage, the cashier pulls my friend's wife aside and says, "I'm sorry to have to tell you this, but I've seen your husband here several times with another woman." Number 2. My brother and I both entered into the science fair. Before the awards ceremony, he got sick, so I went with just my mom. My brother won first place and I didn't place at all. When they called his name, my mom made me go up for him. I stood on a stage, looking out at the sea of friends and teachers clapping for me while a medal was hung over my shoulders and a certificate was shoved into my hands. In the moment, I should have felt proud of my brother, but instead, I just started crying on stage and weirded everybody out. I think they must have thought I was just overwhelmed with happiness, because even when I stepped off of the stage and made a beeline for the back door, people continued to congratulate me and try to shake my hand. Congratulations, my twin's name. It was such a bizarre emotion. Like a blend of jealousy and shame. I walked straight to the back, past my mom, and left. Number 3. If you're a twin, you're bound to eventually have a few embarrassing stories. My whole life has been a system of awkward hugs or ducking a kiss from a girl and yelling, "Wrong one. Wrong one." Brother's girlfriend jumps in your lap while you're watching a movie. It happens. My personal favorite has to do with situations that have occurred due to mistaken identity with my brother now that he's a Marine officer. I joined the Peace Corps shortly after he became an officer. Yay! We're a sitcom setup, and worked as a teacher in Eastern Europe. Over drinks at a dinner during my service with friends of my host family, one of the gentlemen tells me that he used to be a Soviet helicopter pilot and asked me if I'd like to see his uniform. He brings down the full outfit in all its metal glory. We're almost exactly the same size, and he lets me try it on. Thinking how cool this is, I post a picture online wearing it to show everyone. My brother calls me a few days later pissed as all hell because during his screening for a security clearance someone finds pictures of him wearing perfectly tailored Soviet regalia. He yells at me for getting brass up his ass and complains that he might get his clearance postponed. We still laugh about it. Number 4. Not an identical twin. But I worked retail for a few years, and had a lot of regular customers. This one girl would come in, she was awesome, she loved the product, always made conversation over what she was doing, what she had done, we always connected. Sometimes she would initiate the conversation, sometimes I would. Never really learned her name though, which is pretty embarrassing in sales. About a year and a half after knowing her, she walks in one day and I wave to her, she excitedly waves back. All of a sudden, a perfect clone, in a similar outfit but different colors, walks out from behind her. My jaw literally dropped, I was in disbelief. I had been talking to two twin sisters thinking they were the same person for over a year. When I asked why they never pointed it out to me, one goes, "Well, you just seemed to talk to me like you knew me, so I went with it." Surreal experience, honestly. Number 5. When we were in the 6th grade, my brother decided he wanted to stay at home because he wasn't feeling well. So far, there had never been a day where only one of us was at school, but I didn't think anything of it. I was walking down the hall and all of a sudden I was pulled in by a teacher who I had never seen before, and she started yelling at me, and I mean yelling at me, because I had skipped her class and I had the audacity to walk in front of her class right after. It was really awkward to just say, "I have an identical twin brother. My name is Jay Sweat." She of course, thought I was making a terrible excuse and I had to go get another teacher that knew I had a brother to come and tell her that I was telling the truth. She never bothered me again. Other than that, we've never had a super embarrassing story. Number 6. My brother and I are now 25, but in middle school being a twin was funny/embarrassing. We are one of the sets of twins who look exactly alike, get the same haircut, and even our voices sound the same. In 7th grade I was minding my own business in class when someone joked that I wasn't myself. Immediately everyone in the classroom and the teacher decided to investigate. Although I had all my papers with me and all my belongings, they came to the conclusion that we could have switched them. So these Harvard-educated teachers did what they thought was best. They grabbed my brother from his classroom, across the hall, and started comparing us, trying to make sure we were who we said we were. After numerous times of us assuring them we were in the right class, I couldn't help but laugh. After my laugh, people in the classroom started to laugh and come out into the hallway with us. The teachers found this amusing that nobody knew who we were, and now 50+ students are in the hallway trying to tell them who I was and was not. Needless to say, this ended with both of us in the assistant principal's office with a stern warning to not switch courses, even though we were in the right class. Thinking back, what a bunch of morons. Number 7. My grandmother was an identical twin. Her sister passed away before I was born. She didn't like to tell stories from when she was little, but she did tell me one mistaken identity story. She was in their bedroom one night when they were really young and saw her sister through the window. She started talking to her sister to see why she was outside at night. Then she realized it was her reflection. My grandmother had mistaken herself for her twin. One day I was looking through her photo albums and came across some pictures of her twin in her coffin. That picture haunted me until I actually had to see my grandmother in her coffin. Number 8. When I was in high school, my brother and I dated twins. We'll call them Stephanie and Carmen. He was dating Stephanie, I was dating Carmen. They had this cute habit of trying to switch up on us and then give us a hard time for not knowing which of them was which. Going to each other's classes, walking up and hugging us, then holding hands and walking with us before revealing that, oh, wrong twin. It was this game that was equal parts getting to rag on us for not being able to tell the difference, and also what seemed like some sexually charged relationship brinkmanship. It kind of escalated over time, and my brother and I were pretty constantly torn between being excited by the weird, forbidden danger of it all, and also pretty uncomfortable with what started to feel almost like sharing girlfriends. I could usually tell them apart, but if I wasn't paying attention, sometimes Stephanie would pull one over on me and sneak a kiss or end up with a butt grab before I caught on. My brother could literally never tell the difference. The giggle fits they had over getting away with this sneakiness were incredible. And yeah, pretty much anyone can tell the difference between twins if you know them a while, but that's kind of the beauty of their mind game, the seed of doubt. They'd plant that seed of doubt and get you wondering, get you doubting yourself. And the second guessing was the deadly bit. Which is worse, not being able to tell the girl about to kiss you isn't your girlfriend? Or pushing away your girlfriend because you think she's someone else? That doubt was the whole game. Anyway, we lived out in a fairly rural area, and not too far from each other. Carmen would sometimes sneak into my house for sex. I lived on the 3rd floor and my parents had turned the basement into a living space unto itself, so it honestly wasn't even difficult. She'd just park at the edge of the property and walk up. Pretty sure everyone knows where this story is going, so I'll just skip the suspense. One night Stephanie, not Carmen, my girlfriend, snuck into my room for sex. There wasn't much talking, she just let herself in the window. There was a scaffold set up on the side of the house where my father was painting that summer, got onto the bed with me and started kissing me. It was one of their switch-ups and I suspect I wasn't supposed to know it was her, but Carmen had a small scar on her shoulder and I noticed it wasn't there as I pulled her sweater off. I thought about this moment for years afterward. Knowing that this was not my girlfriend kissing me and getting undressed in my room, I decided to go with it anyway. Because people asked all kinds of weird questions in the other thread. Yes, it was very different. No, their vaginas did not feel different. What a effing weird question. She was into different things, kissed differently, liked different things, and was generally more urgent. She didn't stay long after. Carmen usually stayed pretty late, early. Since this also came up a effing lot. No, I did not think of going for a threesome, which would in any case be goddamn weird. Edit, no, we never talked about it. This story was initially told in a "What secret will you take to your grave" thread. Anyway, the next day I asked my brother if he got a surprise midnight visit, kind of expecting that Carmen had visited him. I had assumed the switch up was going both ways and was sort of trying to sort out how I felt about it, beyond weird. He hadn't had a visit. Checked in on him a few more times over the next couple of days, to the point it was getting weird I was asking, so I finally dropped it. That weekend Stephanie dumped him and he never had a clue why. I've never told him I F his girlfriend a few days before they broke up, and I never told the twins I knew they both tried me out. TL, doctor, brother and I dated twins one night. Twin who is not my girlfriend sneaks in for sex pretending to be girlfriend. Brother does not receive corresponding visit and also gets dumped that weekend. Number 9. My father spent a year abroad before returning to enroll in the same college as his twin brother. The first few days were pretty standard, acquaintances of my uncle mistaking my dad for him, business as usual. That was until one girl approached him, publicly mind you, and with a wink said, "You were really great last night. I gave your number to a few friends, I hope you don't mind." Naturally my dad went from there to immediately seek out and congratulate his brother on his good fortune, and hopefully share in the spoils. On the way he found himself receiving a disproportionate level of sly smiles and sidelong glances from some of the groups he passed. By the time he finally found my uncle, he was thoroughly perplexed. Surely his brother couldn't have been this lucky, they were good-looking guys, but this was just ridiculous. My uncle flushed and faltered when confronted by my dad. He stammered and tiptoed around the issue before my dad finally got it out of him. How had he managed so prolific a penile pedigree? He hadn't. Turns out my uncle had spent all his money in the first few weeks and had turned to desperate measures for cash. He had been working as a stripper, doing mostly private parties, but naturally word got around. So for the rest of the year my father had to contend with the fact that a good number of the people on campus had effectively seen him naked. Number 10. In my hometown there was a kid in my grade who looked almost exactly like me, being tall and redheaded. It was pretty unusual. One night I got stopped by the cops and the officer just blew up at me right away, yelling that he had warned me about what would happen if he ever saw me again and that I was going straight to jail. Didn't take me long to figure out he had mistaken me for this other kid and get things straightened out, but it wasn't the only time that happened. Number 11. Here's my mistaken identity story with respect to my identical twin brother. We both attended the same university a long time ago, but had two different majors so our daily schedules stayed completely distinct. School routines commence and I am attending music classes on a regular basis. In due course I start chatting it up with a cute saxophone player. She and I are getting along swimmingly for a while, but in a short while I start noticing a palpable cooling off of her attitude. I shrug it off as someone giving me the back off, not interested message and carry on with my other friends. Life goes on, so many fish in the sea, etc. Fast forward 4 years, it's graduation day. My brother and I are dressed identically in our cap and gowns for the ceremony. We're standing there side by side while our proud parents are taking our picture. For adult twins, this is about as identical looking as you can get without coming across as creepy or lame. When all of a sudden I hear, "Oh my God, I thought you were the biggest snob. You talked to me in the band room like we were best friends and then ignored me in the science building like you didn't want anything to do with me." Yes, it was that saxophone player. By this point, we're both in different relationships and school is over, so there's no real point to pursue anything. Make sure to share your personal story in the comments below and have the opportunity to be featured in a future video. Also, if you like these topics, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification button to continue seeing more content like this every day. See you next time. Warning, this content may be disturbing to some audiences. Subscribe, if you dare. I actually thought that I was in a facility where you could make yourself younger by using other people's lives as fuel. Hey everybody, welcome to AskReddit. People ask Reddit. Serious, people on Reddit who have been in a coma, what was it like? Were you conscious at all or were you completely gone? How did you get into the coma and how did you get out? Number 1. I was in a really bad car wreck a few months ago and F up my internals and got an awful case of pneumonia, so they put me in a medically induced coma. I remember being awake a few times. The first time was when my sister came to visit. I have really fuzzy memories about what happened, but apparently the only thing I said was, "Am I still prettier than you?" Even with all of my ribs broken and being mostly unconscious, still have A+ quality snark. Another time when I was conscious was when they put a catheter in. F that shit. The only other thing I remember was 4th of July because of the fireworks. When I finally woke up I could swear only 3 days had gone by, but in reality it was 2 months. Number 2. I was put into a medically induced coma in 2009. I had swine flu and pneumonia and my lungs were pretty much 3/4 full of blood and other fluids. I was out for almost 2 weeks. I had one dream and it was interesting. I don't remember much of it now, I have it written down somewhere, but the biggest thing I do remember was how time passed in it. Most of the dreams I have, if I'm going somewhere, the time it takes to travel in the dream is insignificant, generally a couple of seconds if that. In this dream, it was like real time. I drove to a house and it literally felt like the drive in my dream took hours. Also, when I walked, I wasn't touching the ground, I was floating. I woke up restrained to the bed because I had yanked the tubes out of my mouth. I was told it took a while for them to revive me and get me back on the ventilator. Number 3. I was hit by a car at 13 and dead at the scene, unresponsive, not breathing, and resuscitated when paramedics arrived. Fortunately the hospital was a block from my crash site and then placed me into a medically induced coma once I arrived at the hospital. I had internal bleeding on my brain and a fractured skull and was flown by helicopter to a medical jet that took me from Kennewick, Washington to Harborview in Seattle. The entire trip took less than 45 minutes or so. The only thing I remember pre-coma was laying on a stretcher with a woman who was standing above me that said, "Cops got tanks, I'm going to give you a catheter, do you know what that is?" I mumbled and wasn't coherent whatsoever, sort of like in that state between almost being asleep and actually being asleep, and then she says it's a slim tube I'm going to insert into your penis, and the moment she says penis she shoves a tube, or whatever it was, into my urethra and I passed out. If I remember correctly, the medical staff had an idea of when I was going to get out of the coma. Evidently, Harborview in Seattle is one of the top hospitals for neurological work. I was definitely completely gone that entire time, though I remember for a few months afterwards having strange recall of conversations and events that happened in my hospital room, but could never make out what they were. It felt very similar to attempting to recall a hyper-realistic dream but without full information. Number 4. Got ran over by a big truck on my motorcycle. Girlfriend was on the back. We were both in a coma. She eventually died. I spent 8 days in a coma. No dreams, no thoughts, no pain, just nothing. It was like a wormhole. 1 minute I was riding my bike, then I woke up briefly in the ER when they shoved a tube into my face, then I woke up 8 days later, disoriented and in a lot of pain. It took me a while to remember what happened. Ended up losing a leg, but I'm lucky to be here, so no complaints. Big shout out to EMTs and doctors and nurses everywhere, you guys are awesome. Number 5. I had been sick for a couple of days, though I had the flu. I was at home the day after Thanksgiving and everyone had gone shopping while I stayed home. I suddenly just couldn't catch my breath and could barely stand up. I tried calling family and friends but nobody was answering. I sat on my porch a few minutes and finally thought to myself, well, if there ever was a time to call 911, this is probably it. Paramedics showed up and put me on oxygen while I was riding to the ER and my heart was racing, so they gave me something I don't remember. Whatever it was absolutely kicked my ass and my whole body felt like I was jolting. I don't remember the ride. I remember wheeling into the ER and they told me they were going to put a tube down my throat to help me breathe. Next thing I remember is that I am tied to a bed in a strange room and there is a tube running into a hole in my neck. My dad, who lives 2,000 miles away, is standing over me and starts telling me that it is the middle of January and that I have been really sick but I am getting better. I couldn't talk, was insanely thirsty, and freezing cold. It took another few before I could stay awake long enough to start piecing it all together. When I could be propped, I motioned for a pen and paper and discovered that I couldn't really control my limbs. I could hold a pen but it just would shake like crazy when I tried to write. They had a sheet with the alphabet and basic words and I could point and try to communicate. Was on the vent for another week while they were sucking massive amounts of brown goo out of my lungs. The sucking out part was excruciating. They'd stick something down the tube and draw it out. Imagine the tickle you get when you need to cough, but it was deep inside my chest and I couldn't cough. To answer your question, I remember having several very vivid dreams. Bizarre situations. Strange colors. In every dream I was unable to move and people were in my dream trying to help me. For example, I dreamt I was inside a huge warehouse full of collapsed shipping containers in downtown LA and I was trapped in a little cave made of these shipping containers. These two little 8-year-old kids with waist-length magenta hair were telling me in a thick Hindi accent that I was sick and they were just trying to help as they were trying to shove a bright green garden hose up my ass. Other dreams I had were trapped in the middle of the desert or on an ice floe in the ocean and my brother-in-law was there. Whatever was wrong with me was due to some bullshit prank he was playing on me, but he was taking me to get help. Then for a while I dreamed I was in a houseboat and a doctor's personal Asian nurse was there with me taking care of me. In the dream I never saw the doctor, but the nurse kept telling me that he was helping me and that I was getting better. On the ceiling was a TV and it was playing the most awesome nature program of all these bizarre anemones and starfish undulating and eating each other. So that's the dreams I had in a coma. As I reran all of them over and over as I was getting better, I realized that the people talking to me were the doctors and nurses, and I mostly had these dreams when they were effing with me. I did have a tube up my ass. I was in a waterbed that would automatically roll me around to prevent bed sores. I was probably freezing from fever often. The kids with magenta hair were the two doctors attending to me. They both have really thick Hindi accents and most of the time they wore magenta scrubs. The Asian nurse was one of the awesome ICU nurses who would chatter away non-stop whenever she was in the room. So after I was aware of my situation but still immobile and on a ventilator, as I mentioned, I was very thirsty. Mind-numbingly thirsty. Oh, I forgot to mention that I wear contacts, and at some point they had taken them out, of course, so all I could see was vague blurry shapes. I can't see clearly past about 6 inches from my nose. Anyway, I'm so thirsty. But I can't drink. I can't talk. I have a breathing tube in my trachea. When dawn would roll around and everyone working in the ICU was hanging around the counter in the hallway, I could smell coffee and breakfast, but I couldn't really see. I had it in my head that the nurse's counter was a long buffet table covered in fruit, and at the end closest to me was a giant fish tank full of ice-cold dark purple grape juice. I would dream of the condensation rolling down the side of the tank. All I wanted more than anything was for someone to wheel me out there so I could lick the side of the tank. It took my dad about a week, remember, I couldn't talk, to remember to bring me my glasses from home. The look of pleasure on my face when he put them on me and I could see again made him cry. And of course the sight of my little 70-yoke tip-headed hobbit of a dad with tears in his eyes about killed me. Lol. Little bastard flew out the Monday after Thanksgiving and sat next to me for a month and a half and I never knew he was there. That still disturbs me. I dreamt about nurses and little people doctors and my brother-in-law, of all people. WTF? But never did my dad or my 2 kids enter into my dreams while in a coma. But that didn't disturb me as much as the sudden realization when he put my glasses on that my glorious purple sweaty fish tank full of icy grape juice didn't exist. Number 6. My coma lasted roughly a week. I had injured my head pretty badly, and nearly split it open. I remember the ambulance and them telling me it'll be okay. When I woke up, it felt as if I had only blinked, went to get up before realizing I was in a hospital bed. Doctors talked to me until I was coherent. I had almost forgotten how to speak and told me it had been a week. I don't recall anything that happened between the ambulance and waking up. You know those times you lay down to go to sleep and when you wake up in the morning, it feels like you were in bed for maybe 5 minutes but your body seems to know it's been hours. It was kind of like that. I could have sworn I merely blinked, but my body felt fatigued and as if it had barely moved for a while. Number 7. I got hit by an underage drunk driver while I was biking home from work in college. It was a hit and run. I got hit pretty hard and broke a lot of bones, even knocked my teeth out when I slammed my face on the handlebars. I was in a coma for 12 days. I woke up in a lot of pain and very confused. Thankfully, they did all the surgeries on my bones while I was out cold. I remember my family all standing around me staring and crying and then the doctor coming in to check my pupils. The doctor asked, "Do you know what day it is?" And before I could answer I heard my mom say, "Ask her a question she'd know even if she hadn't been unconscious," with sarcasm. The last thing I remember is the feeling of the air streaming across my face as I flew forward on impact, even though the paramedics said I was awake when they got there. Apparently I kept telling them I was fine and just wanted to go home, but as soon as they got me in the ambulance I was out cold. I didn't hear anything even though my loved ones were talking to me. I woke up thirsty and sore and just so confused. I kept asking, "What the hell happened?" as I stared at my limbs which were in casts and hanging from contraptions on the bed. I had no concept that any time had passed. Then I relearned to walk and life went on with lots of problems, but as my doctors always say I should have died or at least be paralyzed, so I'm incredibly lucky. Number 8. This past July I was in a terrible car wreck. Immediately after arriving at the hospital they put me in an induced coma which I remained in for 1 full week. I was hallucinating a lot thanks to the medicine they were giving me. I didn't realize that I was in a hospital. I actually thought that I was in a facility where you could make yourself younger by using other people's lives as fuel. Obviously using someone's life as fuel means that they die. I was afraid during this entire week and a few days afterwards that they were going to use my family as fuel for someone else's life to make them younger. I was also afraid they were going to use my life as fuel as well. I felt so helpless. Because of the tubes going down my throat I wasn't able to speak, so I couldn't tell anyone in my family what was going on while they were visiting me. A very frightening experience to say the least. Luckily the drugs wore off after a few days and once I was coherent I started to calm down. Make sure to share your personal story in the comments below and have the opportunity to be featured in a future video. Also, if you like these topics don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification button to continue seeing more content like this every day. See you next time.